Thank you all for tuning in to Primitive Organic Gardening Guitar today. This is my annual pre-hurricane update. I said annual, but sometimes we get more than one hurricane per year. This is actually our first one for the year, and it's, first week of August already. I don't think it's going to be too bad. I'm not worried about this plant because this plant was a volunteer, and this thing really wanted to live. It's competed with the grass. It's contended with not being watered at all. I mean, it's surrounded by all kinds of grass, and it's kicking. This is a bottle gourd plant, as you can probably infer. It's starting to rain. I better get this video update done quick. But yeah, this thing volunteered. A bird must have dropped the seed over here or something. There's also a little volunteer kale, which is kind of funny. And this bottle gourd has just really taken off, so I went ahead and gave it like a nice pole to climb. I don't know why I was gonna say why I planted this. I didn't plant this. I don't know why I let it live. I just love volunteers. They're always so much healthier and hardier and more vigorous than anything that you plant. But I still got probably 40 of these from last year that I haven't finished painting. But wow, we gotta do this update quick. I don't want to get soaked out here. I was gonna try to harvest all the shishitos before the storm, but perhaps I'm already late on that. I don't know how much damage to expect on these. They're fairly like low to the ground bush plants, so maybe they won't get hit too hard. The cucumbers, I don't care if they get damaged because they're getting destroyed by pickleworm, and I almost came out here with a machete and chopped these down the other day. Oh, look at this little caterpillar that hasn't gotten eaten by wasps yet. You're probably gonna die in the hurricane. That's okay. Finish eating my dill plant. It's gonna be your last meal, bud. I don't know why that doesn't want to focus on him. Anyway, little volunteer tomato. I expect this to be just fine in the hurricane. It's surrounded by mulch and some bush. Little farm dog. Hopefully he's going to survive the hurricane. Of course he's going to survive the hurricane. I'm not going to leave him outside. I'm pretty sure this bee's going to do alright. I don't know where it's going to go, but bees are pretty resilient. The dill's going to be fine. The leeks are going to be fine. Stuff might get battered around, but it's not big enough and heavy enough to really get damaged. What's the most hurricane-proof survival crop? The answer is sweet potatoes, because they're mostly under the ground. So that's something that's really important in a hurricane zone. If you're survival garden, you want to plant things that are calories that aren't susceptible to wind damage. There's not a whole lot of root crops that are full of calories that we can grow here. It's too hot for potatoes this time of year, but sweet potatoes do great. This whole area is mostly sweet potatoes. Yes, there's some weeds in here. Not a whole lot I can do about that. It's just too thick and swampy for weed control. But I think the sweet potatoes are going to do great. They're going to survive through the hurricane, be just fine. What else is going to do well in the hurricane? These little loquat trees, they're in pots, and they might get blown all over the yard, but I don't think they're going to die. I really need to come out here and clean. Stuff's going to blow everywhere. Things that I'm worried about. This purple bell pepper plant, I guarantee you, is going to snap in half. And if it doesn't snap in half, the pot's going to blow over, and then it's going to snap in half. I sure hope this tangerine doesn't die. I love this thing, and it's new. I've only had this like 2 years. I normally would bring my fruit trees in the house during a hurricane, but this is a 45-gallon pot, and when it's wet like this, wet soil is about, 6 to 8 pounds a gallon. I don't really want to move this by myself into the house. So yeah, we're just gonna see what happens. Hopefully it doesn't get destroyed. I'm gonna be real sad if it does. The lemons back here, I fully expect that this pot's gonna blow over, but hopefully the lemon bush won't snap in half. Probably gonna lose some of the upper branches, but hopefully the crown and all that'll be okay. These peppers are not gonna fare well. Pepper plants tend to not do good in hurricanes at all. If they don't snap in half from wind damage, they tend to rot after 5 days of straight rain. These are the giant sunchokes, and they've already been getting battered around by the winds. a lot of these are going to come down. They're going to be laying sideways, and it's not particularly tragic because these things are really resilient. Once the weather gets hot and dry again, they'll start to re-sprout from the, see, this one already fell over. But when they fall over like that, it doesn't necessarily ruin the crop because the crop is a root crop, right? So these are gonna look awful after the hurricane. It's gonna look like they got real beat up, but the actual food that's under the ground will probably be okay. These blueberries aren't doing well anyway. They're actually covered by mint. I'm not too worried about those. Another bell pepper plant that's gonna snap in half. This is a wild citrus tree. It will be just fine. The cultivated, domesticated stuff is usually pretty weak. The wild stuff tends to be pretty hardy. This is a chocolate habanero plant that I absolutely love, even though I didn't know it was here. And it's probably going to lose its upper foliage. Wow, there's a bunch of that. I don't even know where that came from. I didn't see that the other day. Yeah, most of the wild stuff's going to be fine. This is some parsnip that volunteered. It'll be just fine. This bell pepper plant is screwed. How about the papaya trees? Well, they do grow papayas in Florida. I don't know what's going to happen to the papaya trees, honestly. This is my first year I've ever had them. If they die, it's not a big deal because I don't think I'm going to get fruit anyway. I only have 2 of them, and apparently papaya pollination is... you need at least 2 or 3 plants, and you have to have a male and a female, and sometimes there's like hermaphroditic plants that might produce fruit, but that's a huge tree in a 5-gallon pot. We talked about how unfortunate that is, but we got some more sweet potatoes. They will be just fine. These pepper plants are probably going to die. Normally I would bring these in the house since they're in buckets, but I have a 50-cell tray of this variety of pepper. This is one of the pimientos for pimiento cheese. Because I have 50 more of them, I'm probably not actually going to worry about coming out here and picking up these heavy buckets. They're not really heavy, but they're full of wet soil and probably fire ants, and I just don't want to bring them in the house because I'm kind of a lazy gardener, and my house is a wreck anyway, and every time I bring plants in the house I end up bringing bugs in the house. These are probably going to die. That's my prediction. The Jaws corn. Now this is ironic. These are the last 2 stalks of corn that I had back here after everything got eaten. And the Malabar spinach, which will be just fine in the hurricane, has been trying to wrap itself around the corn for a week. And twice a day I come out here and pull it off. And now I kind of wish I hadn't done that, because if I had let the Malabar spinach climb up the corn would probably be more secure and more braced for the high winds. But if these corn plants die, I'm not going to cry over it because I don't think I'm going to get corn off of just 2 plants anyway. But it would be kind of ironic because these are survivors. After 598 corn seeds were either dug up or murdered as seedlings, these were the 2 out of the 600 that managed to survive. So if they survived all the onslaught by wildlife and then got offed by some hurricane, that would be overwhelmingly ironic. All these wild tomatoes back here will be fine. Again, wild crops, things that volunteer, things that are less domesticated tend to do a lot better. These are pretty low to the ground. I imagine these will get battered around pretty good, but they'll just resprout. Tomatoes are cool like that, you know, especially the wild types. Anytime they fall over, they just resprout from the stems. This bell pepper back here is probably going to die. We got more sweet potatoes. I don't want to walk back here, it's a big mess. This is some comfrey. The comfrey will be just fine. I also don't really care much about it. It's just, you know, mainly a way that I use chop and drop fertilization. That comfrey's taking up way too much space anyway, so if it gets beat up by the hurricane, no big deal. The loquat tree, that thing is sizable now. I think it'll fend for itself. That loquat tree is probably about 7 or 8 years old now. It's actually 2 trees, but they're growing so close together it looks like one. I'm pretty sure the loquat will be just fine. And if it isn't fine, I have plenty of other loquat trees at I have a fruit orchard that I never film videos of. It's about a mile or 2 down the street. There's a bunch of loquat trees at the fruit orchard, and they'll be just fine. I'm actually pretty concerned about my fruit orchard down the street. I got some new trees I just put in earlier this year. I got a baby grapefruit, a baby peach. I think they're gonna probably not do well. It's unfortunate, but another lemon here. This is something I considered bringing in the house because the pot's not really that heavy and it is an expensive tree, but it's a little late for that now in my opinion. It's already very, very wet out here, and like I said, a lot of times when it's very wet, the fire ants start climbing into the pots, and I just really don't want to bring it in the house. It's got a little bit of wind protection. The loquat borders it from the east. I think most of the winds are going to come from the east. From the, I guess this would be the south here. This shed maybe is going to provide some wind protection. And then I guess from the north and the northeast over here, there's some houses. Although that could just funnel the wind in and make it worse. Hard to say. This little tomato is probably doomed, but I don't really care. This is a big sandwich slicer. It's the variety called Pineapple Pole. But again, we were looking at all the wild tomatoes a few minutes ago, and they always do much better than the cultivated stuff. I'm getting destroyed by mosquitoes out here, even though I'm wearing long sleeves. They're getting my feet and my hands. I gotta cut this video short. I wanted to show you all the entire garden so we could see before and after the hurricane, but I really don't want to keep getting bit by mosquitoes out here. Already had some wind damage last night. These are pole beans and cucumbers that were in 5-gallon buckets. They got way too big for their britches, and they would have fallen over anyway just from their own weight. Tons of pole beans back there. Beans tend to be just fine in hurricanes. The vines are fairly flexible and they don't tend to snap like other things. Other good hurricane-proof crops, herbs. Got all this grapefruit mint, got all this lemon balm, oregano. None of that will be impacted at all by the hurricane. Asparagus. The ferns are going to fall over, but the crowns underneath will be just fine. More sunchokes. We talked about those earlier. They're going to fall over. A lot of them have already fell over. See how they start to turn up after they fall over? This is something I'm worried about. This is my pride and joy, my dwarf tamarillo, my gigantic tropical solanaceous nightshade fruit tree. This is probably too tall to bring in the house. It's not all that heavy. It's only in like a 25 or 30 gallon pot. These fruits are almost ripe here. I would eat a couple, but they don't look quite orange enough yet. You don't want to eat these underripe. This one I probably will bring in the house just because it's in a tiny little pot. And that way if my massive one dies, I got this little one as a backup. This tiny little lemon tree is going in the house. This lemon tree here, bush, I don't know what I'm gonna do with that. More sunchokes, more asparagus. The okra will be just fine. Okra gets batted around in hurricanes, but again, it's one of them crops like sunchokes and tomatoes that can just sort of re-sprout from its stems. You can see this sunflower collapsed in some of the winds we had yesterday before the hurricane actually even got here. It's really not here yet. We have probably 6 more hours until it gets bad. The rain's already started, but we're not really expecting high winds until about 8 o'clock tonight. More sweet potatoes that are just volunteering all over the place. They're gonna be fine. Shishito pepper, I don't really care. I got tons of them. This is my beautiful 2-year-old overwintered purple bell pepper plant. You can see the fruits start out a greenish purple and then they eventually turn like a beautiful burgundy color. Some of them actually turn bright red. I should probably bring this thing in the house. I don't know if I'm going to or not. Let's see. The eggplant, probably gonna die. These tomatoes are probably gonna die. Pepper probably gonna die. Yeah, I think all this stuff is straight doomed. It's not protected at all. It's facing east. Don't have high hopes for any of that. This little volunteer lemon tree will probably be fine. Well, we shall see. Some more sweet potatoes volunteering. Oh look, this bell pepper already fell over in the wind. What a shame. More sweet potatoes. Collards, they're gonna be just fine. Their stems are enormously thick at this point. Some more pole beans. Some more pole beans. I don't think we really need to look at the stuff in the front yard because we kind of already looked at the stuff in the front yard on the corn fortification video I shot a few minutes ago. there's nothing in the front yard I really care about other than the flowers, but I mean, I don't even really care about those. So yeah, I'll come out here, I guess, Tuesday afternoon, and I expect all of this to be flooded, probably past my ankles, possibly flooded all the way halfway to my knee. This is a swamp. A lot of times people forget that. I built this area up over the years with dozens and dozens of, truckloads of wood chips and compost and all that. A lot of chop and drop, heavy cover cropping. I built this area up so it doesn't flood as bad as it used to, but it's still a swamp. And we're looking at actually like 7 days of thunderstorms. So anyway, thank y'all for tuning into my pre-hurricane update. Hopefully the farm dog will make it.